What if you could change your life? What if the sorrow could become joy and the darkness the light? What if you could heal not only yourself but those around you? Well, you can. This is Alchemy, and these are the Alchemy Sisters. Join psychic Jennie McDaniel and spiritual advisor Mandee Elam for a magical 1-hour journey into esoteric spiritual discussions.
Hello and welcome to the Alchemy Sisters. You are here with Mandee and Jennie. If you're just tuning in or if this is your first time listening to the Alchemy Sisters, we host this discussion each week in relation to the multiverse, healing, navigating life, and divine energies. We typically have special guests and we intend to bring awareness, clarity, knowledge, and free healing and resources to our listeners. And we're honored you're here with us today. Hi, Jennie. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good, Mandee. How are you?
I'm good. I can't complain. It's a beautiful day in South Florida where I'm at, and I went for a nice long walk this morning with my dogs and having a nice little morning. How about you?
It's a beautiful overcasty morning here in Northern California. I love the sunshine, but it always makes it look so mystical out here when we get a little bit of cloud and rain. So I always feel like I'm in the midst of Avalon. So I love it. It's beautiful here too, even though it's a bit of overcast. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties. Can you hear me okay, Mandee?
I actually can hear you quite well. Yep.
Wonderful. Excellent.
Good.
Yes, I'm excited about our guest.
I am too. Our guest today is Cheryl Muir, and she is a relationship pattern interrupter who helps frustrated women to gain power over their dating drama that consumes them. And we are honored to have a discussion with her. So welcome, Cheryl. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to dig in.
Oh, good. Yeah, we have so much we want to talk to you about. A lot of our guests, when they call in or call in for readings, always want to know about love or always want to know if they've met their twin flame. And, you know how it all goes. So we're like, we got to have Cheryl on. Cheryl, can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do and how they can find you if they want to look you up while we're having this discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. My work is relationship pattern interrupting. So I'm not a dating coach or a love coach, but I really look at where it is you're stuck in love, what your patterns are. I have this superpower of really zoning in and figuring out themes and patterns. I'm not sure exactly where that's come from, but it's always been something I've been able to do. I think it's perhaps an INFJ thing. If anyone knows Myers-Briggs, I'm INFJ. So we're really able to zoom in and zone in and figure out patterns and themes and cut through the bullshit and really figure out, well, what is it you're doing and why is it you're doing that and how do we heal that core wound so that we can move you forward? So it's not about go to this coffee shop and say this thing to this guy, this perfect line, and you'll find love. It's not about that. It's like that Rumi quote. It's not about seeking to find love, but removing the barriers that we've built against it. And that's really what I do. I remove those barriers and I look at what your family dynamics were like, what your relationship with your mother was like, your father, what that made you believe about yourself, and really get into that. And sometimes I go into past lives as well. Sometimes past life memories come through. And really, it's about getting out of your own way. So that's a little bit about what I do. I used to focus solely on twin flames, and it used to be 100% of my work, and now it's maybe 5 to 10%. So the twin flame stuff is still there. But what I ultimately realized in doing the twin flame work was that no matter what type of soul-to-soul connection you're dealing with, or even if you don't know those labels, it's just a person you know, no matter what the label is, the work is the same, and it's all about going within and all about looking at ourselves and peeling back the layers and healing. So that's a little bit about what I do and how I do it and who I help.
Brilliant. How can our listeners find you if they want to look you up?
They can find me on all the socials. I'm probably most active on Instagram, but I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. My handles there are Cheryl J. Muir. I have a YouTube channel, and just put my name into YouTube, you'll find me. And I have episodes of Love Bites that go out every Tuesday. They're bite-sized wisdom on love, self-worth, and soul growth. And my website is cherylmuir.com.
Love Bites. I love that.
A little bit saucy, a little bit like me, so it's perfect for me.
We get a little saucy on the Alchemy Sisters. We're always doing all kinds of great things and having all kinds of brilliant sex discussions. And we just launched another new show on our network called Womb Magic, which is all about all kinds of steamy female sauciness. And I just love it.
I should be on that too. I'd have a great time.
That's what I was thinking. We're going to have you back on that one, too.
I think so.
Wanted to kick it over to Jennie. Are you with us?
I am. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Cheryl, what year were you born? That's my favorite question to ask all the healers I meet. What year were you born? What year did you pop in?
I've never been asked that question before, and I love it because that's so connected to so many things. So it's a brilliant question. 1985.
Me too.
85.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go, Mandee. Oh. There's your sister, your
there
80s
you go.
sister. Yeah, I love it. You know, in my spiritual work, I always tell people you get control of two things. You pick the womb you come out of, and you pick the day that you were born. I'm sure there's some stipulations with that, with birthing and everything. And everything after that is a roll of the dice. So I'm always very curious what the higher self of Cheryl, the very magical healer, chose. And I see that you sat right with the rest of us, that there's a bunch of rogue souls that came in the 70s and 80s, and we're here to take over. And by the time the shit hits the fan, we're in our 40s and 50s, and we can actually handle it and not losing it in our 20s and 30s. So it was brilliant strategy on some of us rogue souls' part to come in big flushes to take care of what needs to be cleaned up.
I love that. I feel I always have a bit of a rebel archetype. So the fact that you described it as rogue souls really resonates on so many levels. I love that.
Yeah, I can feel you. It's good. I like it. So thank you for showing up on the planet, and thank you for showing up on the Alchemy Sisters. We absolutely dig bringing on high-vibed energies. It's so refreshing for us, and we just love throwing conversation around. And so thank you so much for showing up. Now, where are you exactly? I don't know if I found that out.
Yeah, I'm a Brit, as you might be able to tell from the old accent. But us Brits get around the world. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm in England. But I am. I'm in a beautiful part of England in the northwest called the Lake District. It's a national park. And actually, just before our chat, I just got back very sweaty about half an hour ago from a walk around the country lanes and by the water. And it was just beautiful. So, yeah, I'm in the Lake District in England.
Beautiful. I'll get there one day. It's definitely
gorgeous.
on the list. Yes.
Me too. I love that, and it's so cool knowing that you came in 1985 as well, Cheryl, and look at how far you've come in your short life and all the things that you've experienced in order to bring forth your gifts and your work to share with the world and to help create change. It's fascinating and wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
What are some of the biggest things when a client comes to you, or what are I think the question would be, what are some of the most common patterns you see and that you work with interrupting?
There are a couple, and they might sound contradictory, but they can coexist. So one of the most common ones is overcommitting to someone who isn't committing to you. I was going to say someone who isn't yours, but we don't belong to each other. That's not how it works. But it's usually when my clients come to me, they're very, very smart women. They're career driven. They're very much like us, and that they're mission led and purpose driven. But there's someone that they can't quite get over, and they can't work out why that is. And often it's quite a strong soul to soul connection. So it's a twin flame, or it's very karmic. And sometimes they don't know those labels at all, but it doesn't really matter because, as I said before, the work is the same. But they're finding they can't move forward from him. And when we dig in further, what transpires is that they were overgiving. They were committing to him, and he didn't want a relationship with her, or couldn't give her one, or dare I even say was dating someone else, or was married, or wasn't available. And so I go, okay, so is that a pattern for you? You know, tell me about your other relationships. Tell me about your childhood. And it usually turns out that they didn't have a healthy relationship with their father and or their mother, or they didn't know their dad, or the dynamics at home were not healthy, that conflict resolution was not really a thing. And so it all links back to that. And it sounds a little bit Freudian, but really we're smart women, and we don't do things randomly. We might have a great career, but we're, tripping out over the person that hasn't texted us back. And it's not random, and we can be so hard on ourselves and be like, why can't I figure this out? But it's a pattern, and it usually goes back to childhood. So my work is to be a bit of a spiritual detective and really find out, well, where did that come from? And so another pattern, and this is the one that might sound contradictory, but it can coexist with the clinginess and the neediness and the overgiving and the overcommitting, is pushing people away. And it's an archetype that I call Miss Lone Wolf. And I know that archetype well because I've been here, and still sometimes I am, and I struggle to reach out for support sometimes, but I'm working on it and I'm getting better. But with that archetype of lone wolf, you feel very alone in the world. And so people who are like this, women who are like this, are usually outwardly very successful. They know exactly why they're here. They have achieved a lot. They're very proud to be self-made. But they also really struggle to ask for help. They struggle to ask for support. They do everything themselves. And that in and of itself, you may not think is a problem, but it's the reason why that's happening. So usually there's been some event where they felt very betrayed, where they were vulnerable and asked for support and didn't receive it, or there was some kind of messaging as a child where other people are not safe, and so we close ourselves off. And we do that in our careers, we do that in friendships, and that transfers over to dating as well. So we can do both. If you're Miss Lone Wolf, you might think, well, how could I become Miss Clingy? Well, it's quite easy because they're both based in attachment trauma, and they're both surrounded by this real lack of a grasp on what healthy connection is. So if you're used to pushing away, as soon as you get close to someone, you're going to cling because you just don't know what's healthy. And obviously we strive to be somewhere in the middle where we're balanced and we can love and connect without having to own or attach or obsess. So that's a little bit about the patterns that I see and where they come from and how I help people to try and connect the dots, really.
Excellent. Have you studied psychology?
Yeah, I have. Qualification-wise, I'm certified as a coach. Coaching is obviously an unregulated industry, but I decided to get certified as a coach 5 years ago. And I've been studying psychology for about 10 years. And while I don't have any formal qualifications in it, whenever I talk to my friends who do have a degree in psych, they're like, you have an honorary degree in psychology at this point.
Oh, I see that.
So many books. Yeah, yeah. I've lived it too, and the school of life is perhaps arguably the best school sometimes, Earth School.
I'll argue that too.
Yeah, I've lived this stuff. I read it in a book. I'm like, yeah, I know that. I lived that. I grew up in that environment. So, yeah, psychology is something that's always been fascinating to me. And because of my environment growing up, it was something that I really needed to look at as I got into my 20s. So, yeah, it's been a lifelong journey.
Cheryl, I'm a dead ringer for that lone wolf archetype. I'm like, you're putting labels on things I know. How is she doing this? This is awesome.
This is my superpower.
I like that. I like that label because I consider myself a shamanic practitioner. I like to take people in parallel lives and we visit themselves and we get skills and clear up some karmas if we can. And I do that kind of work, but I don't get into the spirit animal very much. So I never got into it, never really was drawn to a certain animal. When I was in Boulder at this class and the shamanic teacher was wildly egoic and my soul couldn't even sit in the room. There was so much ego. So I had to get up and leave and a lone wolf energetically followed me. And I knew that was then my spirit guide. So the lone wolf was like, I'm out of here too. So we walked out of that class together, went in the sunshine and did our own schooling in the world, and it was a lot better for both of us. So that's very interesting. And I love that terminology. And I appreciate all your studies in psychology. I often tell people that I'm kind of like a psychologist because even though I consider myself also a psychic, it's just all psych. It's psychology. It's in the mind. Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
I do too. I was thinking a lot about when you mentioned attachment trauma and all that. And when I was studying about 10 years ago or so, I really fell in love with the attachment theory, and I was fascinated by it.
So fascinating. It really is.
It really is. And you were kind of, hinting to that a little bit, and maybe you could kind of give us a little brief overview of what that looks like and how you're seeing that with your clients.
So I don't know if I'm going to go into the actual meat and potatoes of attachment.
That is okay.
Because I'm, that's really kind of counseling territory, and I want to stay in my lane here. And someone can go to YouTube and put in attachment trauma, and there'll be a brilliant whiteboard animation that can tell you exactly what the types are. But what it's really about is, what was your relationship like with your mother? What was your relationship like with your father? Another really interesting thing that's linked to attachment trauma, and I was talking to my friend Ismini, who's a counselor and who was a counselor for 10 years. I keep saying I'm going to get T-shirts printed saying all my friends are psychiatrists or all my friends are therapists, because they are. So go figure. Like, we're all in this kind of psychology world, right? But she was explaining narcissism in parenting, and it was so interesting because if we have a parent that, and I'm not talking about someone that has full-blown narcissistic personality disorder, because you don't need to study psychology to detect one of those people. Like, you can see them in the workplace, you can see them walking down the street, it's easy to detect. But when a parent has a narcissistic wound, they cannot, this blew my mind when my friend told me this, they cannot hear their child cry. And so when that happens, if we are the child, whether we're a baby, and I'm not talking about abuse, that's a different thing, but when we're a baby or a very young child, what we learn is when I cry, nobody comes to me. And when we become a child, we're 5 or 6, we continue in this environment and we internalize my needs are not important, other people's needs are more important. I'm told to give my bag of sweets, my bag of candy, and offer them to everyone else before I take one. Everyone else must be taken care of before I take care of me. And then we get older and it becomes, I actually can't count on anyone else. So if anyone's going to meet my needs, I have to do it because no one's going to do that for me. And so that becomes back into the lone wolf archetype. That becomes someone who's really driven to get their needs met because it didn't happen as a child, but also not trusting anyone else is going to meet their needs. So even though that's not technically attachment theory, it explains how an attachment with a parent can manifest as how we relate to other people. And it's really, really important that we understand where it comes from, because otherwise we're just being all fucked up in relationships and we're like, why can I not do this? Why is this so difficult for me? And when we understand where it comes from, we can pull it out by the roots, and then it's not there anymore, and we don't have to keep referencing that because we've removed that template. Does that make sense?
Totally. I really appreciate it. I have a lot of clients often, who are empaths, and a lot of people who listen to the show are empaths. And we often see it play out. I'm sure you see it in your work all the time, the empath and narcissistic relationship. And it's funny because the empaths are very quick to just blame, oh, well, I was in a relationship with a narcissist, or my parents were this or that. And I'll take it a little, unravel the onion a little and go a little deeper. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Do you think you maybe picked up some of these patterns or some of these narcissistic tendencies simply out of defense, but that maybe you have some of them as well and you're starting to act that way? Because I think people often, if they're in any sort of, unhealthy relationship, it's really easy to become defensive, and then it's often even easier to pick up certain traits simply out of defense, and then it creates unhealthy patterns that people don't know about or notice on a subconscious level.
I love that you said that, because I teach that in a very similar way, actually. And when people are saying things like, I dated a narcissist, particularly with I'm going to just address the empath thing first.
Yeah.
I don't believe empaths date narcissists. I believe codependent people date narcissists. And being an empath and being codependent are not mutually exclusive, but I see them as circles that sometimes overlap. And how much they overlap depends on how much we've looked at our stuff. So I'm an empath too, but I've also had codependency. They're not one and the same. But I think sometimes people say, I take on other people's energy, people walk all over me, I'm just such a loving person, I'm an empath. I'm like, actually, that's codependency. That's not, an empath is having a superpower of walking into a room and being able to, 1, detect the energy in the room, and 2, influence the energy in the room. And it's like having this power where you can tell, you look at someone and you're like, I know that your father just passed. I know that something's going on at home and you're not happy. And it's not like an analytical thing of, your shoulders are hunched and your voice sounds low. It's just this intuitive feeling. For me, it's a feeling. I definitely have that clairsentience. It's a feeling, and because of that, we can adjust our behavior and adjust how we communicate with the person because we feel and we know that something's off with them. So that's the superpower of being an empath. But I think people use empath and kind of make it a dirty word when it's not. It's a beautiful, beautiful honor and a gift. So there's that. But also when I hear this quite a lot in my work, not from my clients, but in my audience sometimes. and people say I dated a narcissist, but they've then taken on this label or this identity as a victim. And if victimhood is incredibly narcissistic, and it's really exactly what you said, that, you know, do you think you've picked up some of those traits? Because when someone's in a victim story, they're going, this happened to me and it was so unfair and da-da-da-da. I'm like, well, where is anyone else in that story? That's just all about you, and that's narcissistic. So that's what I would say, is we've got to be really careful not to then turn into the person that hurt us. And that's really at the crux of the work that I do.
I had a feeling. And I was like, you know, I feel like Cheryl covers all this territory, and I've been seeing it more and more. And it's like, you know, and I'm really interested in your definition of, you know, karmic patterns and twin flame patterns and things like that, because we get these all-encompassing labels, and then we identify in it, and we're like, wait a second, can we break this down? Can we look at us as a sovereign being and see what kind of conditionings did you go through? What kind of trauma and drama happened? You know, what were you conditioned to think and believe? How did you have to survive? You know, and when we break it down a little, we're like, oh, there's your essence. We're back to you. Here we are. Let's move forward from here.
Exactly. And, you know, the way my friend Ismini described it, which I thought was so brilliant, she said, nobody is, like going back to parenting, nobody is a narcissistic parent, but they have a narcissistic wound. And she explained then through a model called transactional analysis, which is another counseling model of being in adult and not being in adaptive child, i.e. the coping mechanism we use as children, and not being in critical parent, i.e. becoming the critical voice that our parents use, but staying in this very adult position. When we stay in that place and we're dealing with our older parent, now that we're growing up, dealing with them and knowing they have a narcissistic wound, we can really navigate that instead of looking at them and going, my mum's a narcissist, and let me look at all these videos on YouTube that tell me how she's a villain. Instead, let me just take that information and know that if I stay in this role of adult and stay very calm and stay very emotionally balanced, then I can really guide the way this interaction goes and make it a lot healthier. And that helps her and that helps me, because I'm not pointing fingers and saying, you are a narcissist, you're bad. It's like, no, you have this wound. And so I need to acknowledge you and give you that, dare I say, validation first, to say, I hear you. But right now, what I need to do is this. I'm actually just going to be on a podcast in like 5 minutes. I need to call you back another time. Can we talk about this later? But just knowing that and taking the label away, I think will really help people. So going back to relationships, if you're saying, I dated a narcissist, it just takes away all of our power. Instead, we can ask, if they're not to blame, then what? If they're not to blame, then what? And we go, well, what's my responsibility in this? We might find that we attracted someone like that because we had really poor boundaries. And we're like, okay, so knowing that, now what? And what led me to have this kind of person in my life? And this is not a blaming thing. This is really an empowerment thing, because then we get to look at it and go, oh, guess what? Now I know how to spot someone that has a narcissistic wound. That's going to be a really valuable tool, because I'm never going to do that again. And it's not to blame anyone. It's like no one's wrong. It's just we need to understand people's psyche and then understand what our part in this is and what's their part in it. Like, what I find people doing is that they either take on all of the responsibility and all of the blame, which is usually a family wound. They were made like a scapegoat as children, and they're like, oh, everything's my fault. Or it's all the other person's fault. And it's neither one is true. It's so extreme. We live in these extremes all the time. But actually, it's like we all have responsibility, and it's the powerful thing is taking responsibility for our part in it and saying, oh, actually, I chose this person with a narcissistic wound because, you know what, it actually filled a need in me. I was really vulnerable to the attention because I felt kind of lonely. Okay, so if I feel lonely, what does that mean? It means that I don't have a lot of connection in my life. Okay, great. How can I get healthy connection in my life? Well, I'm going to start going to events and meeting my soul family. I'm going to call my friends that I've lost touch with. And when we start to do that, we take back our power and we stop blaming the other person, because they're gone. It's over. Like, that was years ago. Like, it's finished. And then we create our future because we've let go of the past. And that's really, really powerful.
That's super powerful. Creating our future because of letting go of the past. I absolutely love that. I just love that. And it's you know, and even like, I love that you're referencing, you know, people not, you know, jumping into victimhood, because it does. It creates all of these different patterns. And what are some this is kind of, I don't know if you've ever been asked this question, but say you were to offer dating tips for teens or younger women who are just starting to date. What are some healthy boundaries they could start with, like from scratch here, before going, they can't avoid the traumas and dramas. It's going to happen. But if they have some skills and some ideas and resources in their pockets, what are some things that you would suggest that look like healthy relationships?
So I think probably a great place to start with that, and that's a brilliant question. I haven't been asked that before, but I love your spin on it. A good place to start is, what does a healthy relationship look like? Which sounds really obvious, but most people don't think about this. So an unhealthy relationship is obsession, addiction, neediness, clinginess, blaming, shaming, that kind of toxic environment. None of that's healthy, right? And we know this, that's obvious. Healthy is when you are able to work with someone, you're able to communicate with someone, you meet one another's needs. It's not that one person's needs get met and the other one doesn't. It's equal give and take. It's wanting to support one another, being able to talk to one another about what you need, and the other person's willing to meet you there. It doesn't mean it's perfect, because we're humans. And I have a client at the moment who is working through a relationship with a really, really beautiful man, an incredible soul. And they're doing beautiful work together, but sometimes it's tough because their stuff comes up, and he's in therapy and she's in therapy, and they're both working together, and they're able to come out of a session with the therapist and come home and say, hey, I learned this about myself today, and what I've learned I need is this. And so what I'd really love for us to do is this. Would that be okay? Yeah, of course, that's great. And, what I need is this. And that's healthy, because you're having this conversation and you're not saying, you didn't text me back and I made dinner for you and you're this and you're that. Like, it's none of that blaming that any of us grew up with in that kind of environment, right? And it's about being able to work together. So knowing what that template looks like, and it's really important to start with that, because most of us didn't have that growing up. Who are like, what's a healthy relationship like? I don't fucking know. Never seen it. No idea.
Exactly.
So that's what it looks like. We know what it doesn't look like now. We know what it does look like. So we start there and we say, well, what is it I want? And I'm not talking about tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, like, who cares? It's, you want to be attracted to your partner, of course, but what is it I need? Like, what are the prerequisites? Well, I want someone who's actively working on themselves. I want someone who's really emotionally aware and who takes responsibility for their stuff. I want them to be in some kind of career where they feel like they're making a difference. They don't have to be a philanthropist. They don't have to be a coach. They don't have to be in psychology, but are they passionate about what they do, and does it make a positive impact in some way, shape, or form, right? So you get clear on that's what you want, and then you go into it, and you're like, well, what are my no's? What are my absolute hard lines? What are my lines in the sand where I'm like, that's not okay? So addiction, for me, addiction wouldn't be okay. Any kind of victimhood, like complaining, negativity, very low vibe, none of that would work for me. I would need someone that's coming to the table in an equal way. We're both bringing something equal to one another. And so when you know that, you're like, okay, that's what a healthy relationship looks like. That's what I want. And so what are some of the boundaries I have? Well, I'm actually not going to give them the girlfriend experience until we're in a relationship. It's really important that I'm able to receive from a man. And so I'm not going to overgive, and I'm not going to cling. And when these things happen, when I'm pressured for sex before our relationship, if that's a boundary for you, it doesn't matter if it's not, but if it is, then you're like, okay, when this happens, I'm going to do this. And you write down what you will and won't tolerate. And when you have it written down in black and white, when something happens, you refer to your list in a very organized way, and you're like, oh, that's a boundary for me. Because when you like someone, it's very easy to cross your own boundaries if you don't know what your boundaries even are. And then the final note that I will say is that if you don't think your needs are worthy of being met, none of what I said is even going to stick. It's not even going to be relevant. It's not even going to matter, because you think, oh, I'm not worthy of having my needs met, and other people are more important than me because I was brought up in that environment. And so you have to actually start with, and this is, people are going to be like, did she really just say this after all that? It's going to be like, this is the crux of the issue. But the crux of the issue is, we have to really value and respect and love ourselves. And I know we've heard this in a million different ways, but I really want this to land for people, because if we don't love and respect and value ourselves, then we are going to let people trash our boundaries and treat us in a really disrespectful way, because we're not going to have that inner worth and that inner strength to be able to say, this is not okay. So really it starts with our worth. And when we have that, we show up in a different way, we attract different partners. And so it's really not about, what would I say on a date or what are the tips? It's more like, what are my standards? What are my boundaries? What will I and won't I tolerate? And do I know that I'm truly worthy of all of this? So that's where it starts. That was a really long answer, but hopefully a good one.
It was a wonderful answer. And I think that is, that is the basis of the problem. Is I feel like so many of us, we weren't taught to love ourselves. We weren't taught, how do I find my worth? We all just we're kind of born. We learned from our parents. If you got, if you chose some good parents, you may have lucked out a little more than others. Some people chose their parents, I feel like, spiritually, to incarnate, to learn different things about themselves and break karma and all kinds of other things. But something in our society is this whole self-love thing is new. And it's almost taboo. And it's like, wait a minute, self-love. Okay, how do I do that? And if you grew up religious or, even if you didn't grow up religious, the majority of us grew up in a patriarchal society that was very Christian influenced. And it goes back to a lot of what you were talking about receiving. Women in particular were very much taught to give, and serve everyone else before themselves, to the point of depletion where they don't know how to do that. And so I think you really hit the nail on the head there, and it's this whole navigating how to love ourselves and how to find our self-worth, particularly if you grew up in a situation where you were never taught that. You must work with that often.
Yeah, I do. A lot of it comes down to self-worth, and I can almost, I'm tuning in, I can almost hear someone going, yeah, great, but how? How do I want to be worthy, and I don't feel it, so how do I link it up? And the thing is, we're born worthy, right? Little babies, when we're born, we don't think, oh, I'm not worthy. Like, we learn it. And so it's about, again, going back to that moment of when you picked up this learned behavior of feeling not worthy. So when did that start? So that's how we become worthy, is we just basically remove the barriers in the way. We remove the, I'm seeing like layers of like really dark matter, like sludge and slime. We're kind of peeling that off our being and saying, okay, let's get rid of all of that trauma, all of that heaviness, all those limiting beliefs, the patriarchal society we were raised in, religious beliefs that don't line up with who we are, whatever it is for you, and removing that. And then underneath there's like this bright, shiny penny that you were all along, but you just couldn't see it because all of that shit was in the way. So that's how we tap back into our self-worth. It's not that we have to do anything, it's that we just have to remove all the stuff that's in the way.
Oh, that's beautiful. Jennie, are you with us?
I am. I love that imagery. I really like that. I do a lot of imagery work in my practice, and I feel it's very effective. And I have a question for Cheryl. Cheryl, are you actively manifesting your twin flame or a potential?
I've met my twin flame, and
excellent.
It kind of was. It was. Here's the thing about twin flames that people need to understand. And Jennie, I know that you know this is not news for you. I know this, but for people listening, people think, oh, the twin flame is like the ultimate. Like we have hundreds of soulmates and we have one twin flame, so they are the one. And when I meet them, it's like a fairy tale. No, that is not how it is. So twin flames are connected by the soul. They share a soul, and so they are connected in that way. And when you meet them, it's like nothing else. It's a magnetic connection. It feels like static electricity, and this person knows you inside out instantly. And it's like you see through each other. It's like looking at yourself. It's so trippy. And with twin flames, their eyes usually look the same, and that's because the eyes are the window to the soul. And so your eyes look the same. And if they don't when you meet, then they will start to as you evolve. It's very, very trippy. There's all kinds of stuff that happens, and I could talk about this for hours, but really the crux of the issue is you choose to incarnate with your twin flame at this time to learn the lessons, because the attraction and the connection is so magnetic and so intense that the triggers are extreme. So usually say a guy doesn't text you back and you're like, oh, that kind of sucks, I feel a bit sad. He doesn't text you back, like the end of the world. And so because it's so extreme, it forces you to look at it. And one thing that happens in twin flames, which my Virgo moon at 28 degrees loves, because I'm all about the efficiency, it becomes a very, very efficient healing process, because you heal like what would take you 5-10 years to heal in therapy and coaching, it happens in like 18 months. It's so accelerated and so condensed, and that's because meeting them is like, that's your catalyst. Like if you're not awake when you meet them, you will be afterwards. I was when I met mine. I was about 7 years into my healing journey, and then I met him. I'm like, oh, here's all this stuff that I thought I dealt with. that I haven't dealt with. So let's deal with that. And it can be, I don't want to be too negative about this and put this intention out there for people, but it can be a very difficult road. And so twin flames have a lot of karma to clear with each other too. We've spent many, many past lives together. And so when you meet them, it's not so much love at first sight, it's recognition at first sight. And it's also like, I want to wring my hands around your neck at first sight, because your soul is like, here's that motherfucker again. Like, what the hell? You know what I mean? It is. It's like, here's this fucking guy. And it's so extreme, because your soul knows, even if you don't know what's going on in reality. Like, I didn't know what a twin flame was, but I met this person, and a few months after, I'm like, something's happening here, something's occurring. Let me Google this, which was not a good idea. But what I found out in the process was that this was a different kind of connection. And I'm really glad I didn't know what a twin flame was before, because I would have looked for it. So what I would say to people is, don't look for it. Like, you're compatible with so many people and you'll have a beautiful relationship. I can't tell you who that will be with. I would be a very wealthy woman if I could. I'll tell you exactly who it is, when you're going to meet them. Like, we're not God, right? We don't know. We're not meant to know all the time. But yeah, for me, it was a very tough journey. I had a dark night of the soul. I wouldn't change it, because it's got me to where I am now. I know that sounds trite, but it really had to happen in the way that it did. But it was deeply painful for me. That connection will always be there. We'll always feel that connection with them, but we don't necessarily end up in a relationship with them. Some do, right? Some twin flames do, but it will be the hardest relationship you've ever been in, because that triggering doesn't stop right away. Like, there's things you need to work through, and there's karma you need to clear still. And so what I would say to people is, it's not a romantic fairy tale. It is like a deep karmic purging, and it's something your soul agreed to. But there will be times when you're lying in bed crying on a Wednesday afternoon, as I did many a time, where you're like, I want to see the small print on my soul contract, because I'm sure I did not sign up for this. It's ridiculous. But yeah, it was an absolute gong show for me when I met my twin. It was 2 years ago now. I'm in a very different place now, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of that. But it was quite a journey, let me put it that way.
Very interesting. Yeah, the twin flame topic is huge, and I love it, just like I love all new agey kind of metaphysical stuff. But I found that when I looked at it and I dissected it in my own opinion and in my own searchings, when I depicted it and I looked at it, I didn't see us coming from the same soul. I saw us being completely individual souls coming together for a potential twin flame connection. So in my studies and my looking, the way I looked at twin flame work was a little different than the typical thoughts of twin flame. It's a little bit more open-ended, which that's how I tend to look at things across the board. But when I look at it, I see we've lined ourselves up to run across many different types of situations, and it's all about the timing and the free will and what we do with it. And that's why I like to call them in my practice, you're looking for your twin flame potential. I don't think as a higher self we'd only put one entity on the planet that we can learn these outstanding things with. I think we put many in our path, and then what we do is all about timing. And if that person's ready to commit when we're ready to commit, we can learn and burn karma and all these lovely things that twin flames are. So when I talk to my clients, I say, you're in a twin flame potential. The potential is the key trigger of, are you both willing to set ego aside and to work through ego to do your own healing? Now, I've tried those relationships. I've had about 5 of them, and they just didn't work out. So they were twin flame potentials. Now I'm in a twin flame connection where we're doing all those things you listed at the beginning of the show. Is I want to be heard. Are we hearing each other? A healthy relationship is showing up and being emotionally available and all the things that one might want. So it's very tricky. My husband, my ex-husband, I divorced 6 months now, but I met him and it was explosive, just like you described. He had some narcissistic tendencies, so there was a potential for me to build my self-esteem and say, no, he's not willing to move and learn and be reflective. I have to love myself enough and not be a martyr here to it and remove myself, which is the most heartful thing, which just boosted out my solar plexus and just blew up everything in a good way. So yes, these twin flame connections and potentials really do send us in a wave of learning and understanding, like you're reflecting 2 years from now being like, whoa, I'm different, I'm in a different place. That's the intention. So whether it ends up being a positive or a together forever thing, the healing happened. And I can see that gentleman's energy that you were working with there. And
oh, really?
We're talking,
I'd
talking
love
15.
some information on that if you want to share.
They're saying you guys have ran across each other in an intense way 15 times, which I don't usually get into those kind of numbers. Usually it might be like a 7 or an 8. But they're saying that you guys, those weren't all boyfriend, girlfriend type energies. You guys ran across it. They're showing performing arts. They're showing art. They're showing all kinds of educational people, such as it's like you've done everything with him. So I can see where that was intense in this lifetime. So, but what your spirit guides are saying is, we were doing very similar things with these gentlemen. We're saying, hey, can you meet me? Okay, no, I'm going to love myself enough to try to get it somewhere else. Yeah. And that is hard, especially when you're connecting on up to 15 past lives. Now, these aren't past lives. They're parallel lives. They're happening right now. Yes. So it's wildly intense. So in some of my practice, I cut cords. I'm like, these lives are still going to exist, but we're just going to numb this down a little bit, put a little Novocaine in there because this is wild. And it gets consuming and obsessive. Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna comment. We often joke around because everybody wants to meet a twin flame, and Jennie and I are like, "Are you sure?
Are you sure about that?
You really don't." Jennie, that's so generous of you to share your gift in that way with me. I really appreciate it, and it really lines up with. Even though I didn't have the number of past lives, I know of several past lives, and it was traumatic, and so that really validates. If that's the right word, it validates my experience and really puts it into context. So thank you so much.
And your spirit guides want you to know one more thing really quickly here, which is some of those lives were lovely. There was a co-creation, procreation. So that's what gets I remember it was a little bit shoddy at times, but I remember what that was, and I want to try again, and we're admirable as hell giving it a go, just even coming to this planet, let alone showing up in these relationships that could very well, if one lets it, destroy them. So love is the ultimate battle, and I'm glad that you work in that space and help people look at that, because when I find that people have that codependency and that lack of solar plexus strength, they often play that victim space that you were talking about. Yeah. Me and Mandee, we're big on pulling people up out of that and be like, you are in charge. You're the determiner. You create your future. What you want, steer toward it. Put a little effort into it, a little bit of steam when you can, and it's going to move you forward. Einstein's famous for saying that, like, line up what you want with the energy. The reality will happen. It's not, this is not metaphysics. This is science. So it's, by the way, you have Einstein saying hello. He's like, you think we haven't ran across each other with that brain on her? And I'm like, yeah, I see it.
Hey, buddy, how you doing? I hope you're doing all right.
and you know, you had Carl Jung coming in, being like, "There's my girl," talking archetypes, you know. So you've got a lot of back, you got a lot of help in the back here with the non-physical, really claiming you as their own, claiming you as either a student or a teacher for them. And so, yes, you're coming in with some guns, metaphorically. Yes.
That means so much to me. You know, I love Carl Jung's work, and I do a lot of work in inventing my own archetypes, and I didn't know who my guides were there, and now I do. That's very good to know. Thank you so much.
Oh, they love you. They're applauding, standing ovation.
I'm gonna have to get a picture of Carl Jung and just like pop it on my desk now, and just channel him even more than I already am doing unconsciously. He's like,
please do. He's like, you're he's saying something. He's like, he goes, Jennie, you can see it. I'm like, I see it. If she's not already just full-fledged, just offering psychic work in her career, it's just going to open up. You've got this total science base here. You're standing on a wonderful foundation, and it looks like just blooming into the whole metaphysics, and you're going to be able to reach both sides perfectly. I appreciate you for coming here doing that. It's a hard job. Thank you.
Thank you. That means the world to me. And, you know, it's interesting, and this is not going to surprise you at all. I'm sure you're reading this already, but in my birth chart, I have Taurus Sun, Scorpio rising. I have a Scorpio South Node and a Taurus North Node. So I have a lot of Scorpio, which is obviously it's linked to a lot of things, including shadow work, which is why I'm really good at the shadow work with my clients, but also the psychic side is very Scorpio, and the Taurus is very grounded and practical. And so my work, I always explain, it's a blend of the practical and the spiritual. So the fact that you just said that confirms that even further. So thank you.
Yep. And Carl Jung's like, chip off the old block, that one of mine.
Oh.
He's just claiming, he's being teasing. He's teasing. But, they have a sense of humor over there. It's all fun and games, and then we come here for the real work. But he's just saying that's, talk about ripple effect. We've spent time and years and lives working at this, and then we come in to be better versions of ourselves, and they're just admiring you.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And as we're talking, I have my calendar on my wall in front of my desk, and it's a cosmic calendar, and of course it is. What else would it be? And they all have images by NASA, and the one I'm looking at is a constellation. So as you're saying that, I'm literally looking into the stars. So that's so beautiful.
Yes. And then, of course, if you've ever thought about it, past lives, I'm sure it's crossed your mind to think about incarnating on different planets. And they're saying Earth isn't the only place that you like to inhabit. You like to go to places with a lot of water, hence that Scorpio kickback there. You love these planets, which are like 90% water, and you like to be like maybe a water creature type animal thing. Yeah,
I love being in the water. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what they're saying. Yeah, your spirit guides are getting a kick out of this. Yeah, that's wonderful. And then, of course, I saw our past lives together, and we really played hardcore in that psychology space, healing the people. They're laughing. They're like, you guys even found yourself dipping into some cult-like action in past lives. I'm like, what? Us? No way. Were we leading it, or were we following? And they're like, both. And I'm like, oh, yeah, of course. No, they're just teasing, saying that you've been around they're saying there's all learning in that, and it was a heartful space. The cults don't always have to necessarily be negative, but they're just laughing at that connection that we have, where we were, played around in healing the people, and then doing community and seeing if we could create that. And they're showing several lives with Mandee doing that too. I'm taking a look now. They're spreading over to Mandee, and they're showing a little more gypsy connection with Mandee. But you have past lives with Mandee as well, doing some healing art.
So beautiful.
Yeah, I just love how small the world is, really. The internet has really played a key point in that, and connecting all of us so we can see and can feel, and it's wonderful.
I wonder if that's why we all chose to come here and be born in the 80s too, because they're like, Steve Jobs is going to be running Apple any day now. He's got it. Don't you worry. There's going to be iPhones and cat videos and GIFs before you don't even worry about it. It's here.
Exactly. I think about that as an 80s kid. I'm like, look at that. I'm like, right before, and then I remember Y2K, the year 2000 happening, and we were teenagers. I was like 14, 15, and it's it was like, are all the lights going to shut off? What's going to happen? And then it's like, no,
the banks are going to close down. Yeah.
And then it was like, all right, let's rip the Band-Aid off. You guys have a little incubator period. Then 2012, everybody got rocked again. And then here we go, and we're doing this. And look at how far you've come in your short lifetime, and all of the relationships you've held and the space you've held for yourself and others in order to learn this work and to quantify it and bring it into something that you can then transfer and teach other people how to heal themselves. It's magnificent.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. It's no surprise to anyone here, I'm sure, but it's all of my birth chart: relationships, sexuality, entrepreneurship. It's all there. I can't remember the exact terminology because I'm not an astrologer, but when I've had it read by a trusted astrologer of mine, it's all there. And so when we're talking about past lives and such, it's like I've done this before. And when I stepped into the twin flame work and into the relationship work, it's like nobody taught me this. Like I've read a lot of books, obviously, but like what I'm doing doesn't sound like anyone because my soul is remembering. And so it's like I've been doing this for so many lifetimes. This is what I came here to really master. And it just feels like second nature to me. Like I can just work with someone. I'm like, oh, here's where you're stuck in relationships. And that's why in my bio it says clients shift in just one session. And the ego of Cheryl is like, is that really, do they always? I'm like, yeah, they actually do. That happens every time because I just know it. I can see it and I can't explain why. But it's like I know it on a soul deep level. Because I guess I've done this many lifetimes, right? So, yeah, it's just so intuitive to me. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but that just felt like something I needed to share.
I'm actually glad you brought that up because I saw that in your bio and I was going to ask, what are the things that shift? And intuitively, and just by knowing you and following your work, I'm like, of course, because she's teaching them things to become aware, and like awareness is the first part of beginning to heal. And I'm sure just a simple look at all the things we've talked about, and we've only been talking for 50 minutes,
Yeah.
I can't imagine the truths that you reveal to people in that first session.
Yeah, and I go really deep, and I think that's the Scorpio side. And then there's the Virgo moon, which is very efficient. And I also used to be a corporate publicist. And when I was in publicity, time was money. So if you had an hour meeting with a client and they were paying for 3 different PR people to be there, they're paying, $200 an hour for my time. I wasn't earning that, I might add. That was going to the agency and I got my salary. But this is why I now work for myself. But anyway, they have to pay for each person. So it's like they have to get bang for a buck, right? So in an hour, you want to give them tons of value. And I think that really, even though that environment was not for me, it taught me a lot about time management and how it's really, really important to like get shit done, basically. So if a client has an hour with me, and I do 90-minute boot camps now as well, it's like I condense it all. I condense it, and it's as if I'm kind of what I'm feeling now and almost seeing is like timelines collapsing. So those 15 lifetimes that Jennie referred to before, it's like they collapse, and I extract, like from a juicer or something, I extract all the knowledge, and then that kind of gets injected into that session. So it's not that it's just 90 minutes with me. It's like it's the time that I've been studying it in this lifetime and the lifetimes before that I can just get down to what the problem is. It's not the time, it's we can solve the problem within this container, and I can help you identify what it was by asking the right questions, by going deep really quickly, and honestly just like cutting the crap and just getting down to it. Because it doesn't matter who texted who or who's in a relationship with. I'm not interested in that. Let's get down to what you believe about yourself, and let's start there. So that's why clients shift in one session, because I go straight in. I just get straight into the deep end.
I love that. And I don't think your ego is too bold to say that. I think it's real, and it's a lot about like what Jennie does. It's very similar to the quantum karmic healing, wouldn't you say, Jennie?
Yeah, Cheryl and I have lots of parallels. Yes.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Well, we do have, just under 10 minutes left. And on all this, I'm kind of curious, Cheryl, like, what are your views on destiny, on karmic relationships, and on the twin flames, and what is the outlook for people, with love? And if, say, their twin flame didn't make it or something like that, is there opportunities to love and to fall into love with different types of relationships?
Yeah, something that's coming through, I'm kind of tuning into something here, but also what I always say is it's about not attaching to the person, not attaching to the label, and not attaching to the outcome. So it's not like I have to be with this person and it has to be this guy in this way, and this is definitely a twin flame. Like it almost doesn't matter. It comes down to like whether this is a twin flame or, I love the way Jennie described it. It was so beautiful. And we teach on it in the same way with slightly different words, and the words don't really matter. But it's like guiding someone through that process and saying, well, what did you learn from this? Is it karmic? Is it a twin flame? Twin flames are very karmic anyway. What is it you learned, and what is it that you want? And it goes back to what we were saying before about the dating tips for, teens and young women. Like, what is it you want, and what did you learn from this, and how do you feel about yourself, and what was the lesson here? And do you know, do you really truly believe and understand that you're compatible with so many people? You have hundreds and thousands of soulmates, and so you get to have your relationship if that's what you desire. Then it's that whole thing, isn't it, of God's desires were placed in your heart for a reason, or your higher power, or whoever you believe in. It doesn't matter. If you desire that, then that's meant for you. So it's just about getting out of your own way and kind of being a bit more practical with it and saying, let's say this is a twin flame potential or a twin flame connection, like whoever it is, are they treating me in a way that's honorable? Are they available to me? Am I able to have this relationship with them? Or is it at this point really unhealthy? Is it kind of toxic right now? And it's not to blame anyone, but like right now, this person cannot give me what I need. And so the love isn't going anywhere. The love is there. I'll keep you in a little part of my heart, but I can't move forward with you. So I'm going to move forward in my life. I'm going to create a beautiful life. I don't know that our paths will cross again in this lifetime. I mean, kind of hope not, but they might do. Who knows? But the point is looking at that karmic relationship or twin flame relationship and saying, what did I learn here, and how do I move forward? And we don't know. We don't have all the answers. And I did an IGTV today that was about this, and it said something like, what did I channel? It was something like, it's not about getting over someone, it's about letting go. So if someone has a twin flame or a karmic person and just can't get over them, it's not about getting over them, because that love will probably always be there, particularly if you have a really strong connection and your souls really know each other. It's about, how can I just let go? And how can I refocus on myself? And how can I just let go of the outcome? Because I don't know. I'm not God. I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know I get to have a beautiful life, and I do know what I'm worthy of. And I do know that right now I deserve more than this. And so that's what I would say about twin flames and karmic relationships is it's that same old thing. You know, it's go within, and you won't go without. I don't know who just channeled that for me, but whoever that was up there, thank you.
I love it. It's beautiful. What are some suggestions for people who are in relationships perhaps that are not healthy, or in addiction, or what are some things that you encourage people to do to start stepping towards themselves and choosing themselves over the relationship, or holding space, or letting it go?
You know, I had an answer in my head, but something else is coming through, and I think
that's okay. Go for it.
What's coming through is, I think it's because I'm looking at my calendar and it's of space, and I'm hearing the word space. So what I'm interpreting there is that it's about getting space from them, because sometimes if you're in a very unhealthy environment, whether it's a family thing, whether it's, I don't know, roommates, or whether it is, as you said, it's a relationship that's not healthy, it's getting physical space from them, because then you can get clear. You can't get clear if you're in that environment, because you're getting re-triggered and re-traumatized all the time, because it's triggering all of your wounds. And when we're in a triggered state, we can't think clearly. And so it's about trying to get a weekend with your girlfriends, or going to a weekend retreat or an event or whatever it might be, and being with soul family and getting space from him or her. And once you get space from them, you can get clear on what it is you need, and you just have a different perspective. So what I'm tuning into is you need to get space from them. It's easy to say, oh, you know, like we were saying, realize that you're worthy, know that you deserve better. That's great. But if you're too entangled in it, you're too tangled up in what's happening, you're too close to it to be able to make a decision. So try and get space from them, even if it's only an afternoon. Get space away from that environment, away from that person, clear your head and get clear.
Beautiful. That's brilliant. And it makes complete sense. I was even watching a YouTube video by a healer the other day, and she was talking about how, you know, her healthy relationships now, she really likes to even sometimes have separate bedrooms, or make sure that, you know, her and her partner have a lot of separate time, so that she can always be in tune with herself. And, you know, and if we think about it energetically and subtle energy in our auras, if you're sharing a bed, you're entwined, entangled all the time with your energies, and it's really hard to separate that. And I think that the space is definitely potent and beautiful, and probably the best thing anybody can do if they want to heal anything, whether it's a relationship, something to do with themselves, you know, a habit, whatever it is. Taking space is absolutely the best place to start.
It's just about being able to hear yourself again, hear your own voice, and saying, is that them or is that me? And then when we're getting too tangled in it, you know, hello, Scorpio shadow energy at play here. When we get too entangled, we just can't hear ourselves, and we almost forget what it is that we think, feel, and believe. So by getting that space, we get really clear.
I love that. I love that advice. Yeah, I think that couples are so different, like the separate bedrooms. I've been in relationships where maybe it wasn't the most healthy relationships, but it was one of the longer relationships I had. We had separate rooms, and that really worked out for us. In my current relationship, I don't think that would help us. I don't think that we'd do well with that. So it's all about feeling in with that person and connecting and being flexible and trying to hold space for each other the best that you can. And that's difficult. And Mandee and I go into this quite often on the show, where the patriarchy didn't offer the heartful men much to learn from. It was expected that they didn't hold space almost. And so it's tricky and it's hard work. And like Mandee said earlier, we're like, are you sure you want to try the twin flame space? It's explosive. Brace yourself. And then there's that old saying, be careful what you ask for. And I agree with that.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And it's all about, I feel like a broken record now, but it is all about going within and saying, what is this trying to teach me? And it's easier said than done. I know that because I've been there.
Totally.
Well,
And just giving yourself permission, like, I deserve this, and these are the things I want, and I'm going to create my own boundaries. I'm not going to date a narcissist or an addict, or, I'm not going to date someone who's traveling all the time because I want more, I want a closer connection, things like that. I think it's really important to get clear on your wants and your needs, and give yourself and allow yourself permission to do that without worrying you're being too egoic, or you're wanting too much, or you're being too much.
Definitely. Well, Cheryl, thank you for showing up today. The hour goes so quickly. I know we could just do a whole other hour. We'll have to have you back, and we'll do a part 2. We'll get into some other topics. We appreciate you. Do you want to give the audience one more time some information where they can connect with you?
Yes, for sure. Thank you. So you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. My handles there are Cheryl J. Muir. Muir is Muir. My website is cherylmuir.com. And those are the best places to find me.
Thank you so much. And everyone, we're the Alchemy Sisters. We're here every Monday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Give us a little follow and like on TuneIn or iTunes or Spreaker. You can also find us on YouTube. Go ahead and search for the Alchemy Sisters and or Heart Over Ego. Stay tuned. We have a bunch of shows coming. We're going to fill 7 days a week, all kinds of information. We have some of the top of the line astrologists, business healers. What do we have? We have mediums coming on. We have all kinds of stuff. It's going to be a 3-ring circus. So stay tuned. Cheryl, we want you back. We want you. I think you could have your own show. I think you could have shows 7 days a week and entertain people and bring in the information. So we want you back as a regular guest if you're open and available, and consider doing some podcasts yourself. I think you're a natural. I think you're brilliant. I think you're a wonderful speaker. I think that this would be a wonderful platform for you. I appreciate, again, everyone listening in. Until next Monday, everyone have a lovely week.
All the love and light. Thanks.
What if you could change your life? What if the sorrow could become joy and the darkness the light? What if you could heal not only yourself but those around you? Well, you can. This is Alchemy, and these are the Alchemy Sisters. Join psychic Jennie McDaniel and spiritual advisor Mandee Elam for a magical 1-hour journey into esoteric spiritual discussions.